Hello, my name is Dr. Yaya Sisoko. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 9, Argument for Restricting Trade. So what are the arguments for restricting trade? The domestic producers oppose free trade. They believe that the government should protect the domestic industry from foreign competition. In other words, for trade restriction, the government, example of trade restriction are tariff or quota. So the government imposes a tariff or quota to favor the domestic producer over the domestic consumer. So if a foreign producer are able to sell the product, you know, in the domestic market, so cheaper than the domestic producer, then consumer would buy foreign product instead of buying domestic product. So that's why domestic producers oppose free trade. They want the government to protect them from foreign competition, so that by imposing the tariff or the quota, foreign production become more expensive in the domestic market. Therefore, consumer will buy domestic product. So you can see this is very well. Very right here is a domestic producer is doing a survey, and it's coming to ask this man. So you are like protectionist as a working man. If it's the guy is working, he's a protectionist. But how about as a consumer? If you're a consumer, what are you? So you can see that you can. Yeah, so government usually protect the producer, but does not protect the consumer. So one argument for restricting trade is the job argument. Trade with other countries destroy domestic jobs. This means that domestic producers have tough time selling the production, to domestic consumer because of foreign competition. For foreign producer, because of the cheaper price, are a better quality, are able to sell in the domestic market, and therefore domestic producing will not be able to sell the production. This will lead to increase in their inventory. They have to cut back at the level of production by laying off workers. By laying off workers, unemployment will increase in the domestic economy. So therefore, so the government will try to protect the domestic industry by imposing tariff or quota to foreign, imports. So the argument is that free trade creates jobs. At the same time, it destroys them. So another argument is the national security argument. So the industry is vital for national security. So when there are legitimate concern over national security, mm, the government will impose tariff or quota on foreign, so import in order to protect domestic industry. So another argument for trade restriction is the infant industry argument. New industry need temporary trade restriction to help them get started. The new industry is like a baby. When the baby is born, you have to take care of the baby 100%. You need to feed the baby. You need to change the diaper. You wanna wait until the baby start crawling, and then the baby walk so it can take care of itself, feed himself. So the argument is to protect the new industry against foreign competition. So this will allow, the company in the new industry to 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 grow and try to so and try to compete against foreign industry in order to be able to sell in domestic, market. So, however, this policy is difficult to implement, and then it usually the policy is temporary, and sometimes it's hard to remove it. In 2002, President Bush imposed temporary tariff on imported steel. He said, "I decided that imports were severely affected our industry and import industry. So the tariff, which lasts 20 months, offer temporary relief so that the industry could restructure itself." So you can see that usually these policies are temporary policy, so protection is not necessary for an infant industry to grow, because if we protect the new industries, so they won't be able to, so achieve, so they will not have incentive to achieve, so technological innovation in order to be competitive vis-a-vis foreign industry. They will try to to get government, so government protection in order to always try to get government protection in order to compete against foreign industry. So therefore, so the protection give no incentive to new industry to achieve technological innovation in order to be competitive vis-a-vis foreign industry. So another argument for restricting trade is the unfair competition argument. So free trade is desirable only if all countries play by the same rule. This will increase total surplus for the country. So, but sometimes some country will provide subsidy to their businesses. So by providing the subsidy to the businesses, so the business will be able to sell the product at lower prices, and then they can compete against the foreign industry. So by providing subsidy or financial assistance to local domestic producers, then they will be able to compete against foreign producers. So another argument is the protection as the bargaining chips argument. So trade restriction can be useful when you bargain with our trading partner. So you tell them, if they don't do this, then we're going to impose tariff or quota, or so we're going to ban the product in our market. So, however, the trade might not work all the time, because the other country can also retaliate. Trade agreement and the WTO. So the World Trade Organization. So unilaterally approach of to achieve free trade. Some countries will unilaterally remove, so its trading restriction on its own. Great Britain in the 19th century did that. Chile or South Korea also recently, in the recent year, removed trade restriction in order to, achieve free trade. So this will, increase, so competition vis-a-vis foreign producer, and allow domestic producers to achieve technological innovation, and then in order to reduce the domestic price and be able to export to foreign country. Another example also is multilateral approach to free trade. So in this case, so the country will reduce its trade restriction while other countries do the same thing. So I reduce my trade restriction. I reduce the tariff or quota, then you are going to do the same thing. So this was the case for NAFTA, so North American Free Trade Agreement, for GATT, General Agreement for Trade, and for General Agreement for to trade and tariff, for instance. So one example of a trade agreement is a North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. NAFTA was founded in 1993 to lower trade barrier among, so the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So, so, so you could import or export goods and services to this country without paying, so the higher tariff. So another example of trade agreement is the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, known as GATT. So GATT is a continuing series of negotiations among countries of many of the world countries with the goal of promoting free trade. This will remove gradually tariff, between countries, so that with the goal to achieve free trade meaning exporting goods and services with no tariff at all. So one example of a trade agreement is GATT, General Agreement for Trade and Tariff. GATT was, the U.S., the United States helped found GATT after World War II in response to the high tariff imposed during the Great Depression. So GATT was able to successfully reduce the average tariff among member countries from 40%, about 40% to 5%. So you can see that with the reduction of the tariff, country was able to export to other countries, so and be able to achieve so increase in the total surplus, and therefore increase in the economic well-being. So the trade agreement was enforced by the WTO, the World Trade Organization. In 2009, there were 153 countries member of WTO, and these 153 countries accounting for 97% of the world trade. So you can see that most of the countries were member of WTO, and then they were accounting for almost 100% of the world trade. There are some advantages of the multilateral approach over the unilateral approach. Potentially, the multilateral approach results in freer trade than the unilateral approaches. So this will reduce trade restriction abroad and at home. By conducting multilateral trade agreement, so this will reduce trade among these countries, say 5 or 10 countries, and then so they'll be able to export goods and services between themselves, and then the total supply will increase. This will lead to an increase in so the economic well-being of these countries. There is also a political advantage, so producers, for instance, are fewer and better organized than consumer. Your few producer, they get together and then they provide donation to, so candidate during area selection. So this candidate will provide legislation helping the industry in, when they are elected. So it provide a greater political, so influence. For instance, farmer, you know, there are few farmers accounting only for 2 or 3% of U.S. gross domestic product, but yet every year they receive subsidy from the U.S. government. This is the end of chapter 9. Thank you.